Good morning. This is a public hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on Wednesday, May 13th, 2020, in accordance with the provisions of the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Chapter 272. My name is Janet Williams. I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission, and I am opening this hearing at 9:03 a.m. Today's hearing is being conducted via remote video conference pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency orders prohibiting the gathering of large groups of people. Every effort has been made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that the persons watching on Channel 18 who would like to participate in this meeting while it's in progress may do so by calling the phone number that will be displayed on the screen. The agenda for today's hearing and copies of all documents for review today are posted on the town website. At this point, I ask that everybody who has accessed this meeting online, except commissioners, to please turn off your audio and your camera. All commission votes today will be by roll call. I'll call on each commissioner. Please unmute yourself, state your vote, and then you can resume being muted. So that we have a record of the quorum of the commission attending today, I'll now ask each commission member to indicate their presence by stating their name and present. So, Ms. Holt.
Commissioner Holt, present.
Thank you. Mr. Kitts.
Kitts, present.
Thank you. Mr. Walls.
Rawls here.
Thank you. Mr. Delvecchio.
Delvecchio, present.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Clark here.
Thank you. So we have a full complement of commissioners in attendance today. Yesterday, as the chair of the Conservation Commission, I issued a declaration regarding scheduling of hearings for the applications that had been filed since the start of the emergency order on March 10th. I now will read that declaration. On March 10th, 2020, in response to the COVID-19 emergency, Governor Baker declared a state of emergency. This state will last until the governor affirmatively lifts the order. On April 3rd, 2020, the Massachusetts legislature passed the Act of 2020 to address the challenges faced by municipal authorities resulting from COVID-19. The Act of 2020 suspended statutory and regulatory deadlines applicable to the Conservation Commission. The effect is that during this state of emergency, the 21-day requirement for the Commission to take action, open a hearing, or issue orders of condition has been temporarily suspended. The Act provides that this suspension of deadlines will remain in place until 45 days after the governor lifts the emergency order. In addition, Section 17B of the Act of 2020 provides that a board or commission may schedule and reschedule a hearing one or more times by declaration of its chair without the need for approval by a quorum of the board. Notice of the rescheduling, including the new date, must be provided to the applicant in writing and posted on the town clerk's website. The Chatham Conservation Commission has been working throughout this state of emergency in an effort to process, review, and hear applications and issue orders of condition in as timely a fashion as possible. However, working remotely without access to the files in the Conservation Division's office, holding hearings via video conference platform has slowed down an already complex process. The Commission has found over this period that hearings on a remote platform generally take more than twice as long as hearings conducted in person. In addition, the Commission has found that the maximum amount of time that can be spent participating in a remote hearing is approximately 3 hours. Even working under these circumstances, the Commission has been able to hear a significant number of applications and has issued orders of condition for most applications that were in process before March 10th. Since the start of the emergency period on March 10th, the Commission has received 16 new substantive applications. In order to address these new applications, as well as remaining mindful of the rights of abutters, the Commission will take the following steps to schedule hearings and issue orders. First, I'm hereby exercising the authority conferred on me by Section 17B 5 of the Act of 2020 as chair of the Conservation Commission to declare that the following applications are being rescheduled based on the order that they were received. The dates below will be sent out, have been already sent out to everybody on the email list. They are posted on the town's website. We have rescheduled these hearings strictly in accordance with the date of filing. And since several of you have asked about those dates, we're going to reference them in the following schedule, and I'm going to go through it, and then the commission will have a vote to ratify it. So the applications that were received between March 10th and March 23rd are being heard today. And those are 158 Old Field Bend, 324 Shore Road, and 38 Briggs Way. Those are scheduled for today's hearing. The next three that were received between March 10th and March 23rd are scheduled for hearing on May 27th. And those are 39 Homestead Lane, 14 Pine Ridge Road, and 45 Bar Cliff Extension. The applications that were received on March 24th have been scheduled for hearings as follows. On June 10th, 46 Little Beach Road, 47 Little Beach Road, and 53 Little Beach Road. On June 24th, 114 Chat Harbor Road and 104 Cranberry Lane. On July 8th.
Janet, real quick, it's
Yeah.
144 Chat Harbor Lane.
144, my mistake.
No, it's okay.
Check. On July 8th, 335 Cedar Street, 74 and 77 Sears Point Road, and 159 Sea Point Road. For the applications that were received on April 6th, they will be heard on July 22nd. They are 86 Harbor View Road and 366 Sea Pine Road. In addition, since that table was first developed, 3 other applications were received on April 28th, and they are now scheduled for August 12th and will be added to this schedule and posted. And those are scheduled for August 12th are 24 Cedar Street, 33 Honeysuckle Lane, and 83 Seagull Road. It's my understanding, in addition, that a number of other applications have recently been received in May, and we will be scheduling those out beyond this date of August 12th. As long as the state of emergency continues and for 45 days thereafter, applications will be scheduled as they are received for hearings after August 12th. A couple of observations at this point I would make. I will not be taking any questions or comments at this time. As you've seen, we have a long agenda to get through today. I have already heard from several of you with respect to your concerns and your frustrations about this schedule. I know many of you are keenly disappointed by the schedule. However, as we have said before, the commission is working as hard as we can to get through this workload, this pipeline. It takes longer than it used to take. We have devised this schedule based on the calculation of a 3-hour maximum hearing means that we can only schedule 2 to 3 new filings, which along with those that are already in process and will have been continued to that date, plus the administrative filings such as administrative reviews, certificates of compliance, will generally fills up each hearing date. So when you see a date that only has 2 or 3 NOI scheduled, be aware that it will also contain continued hearings and administrative matters. A number of you have made some suggestions about the ways that we can deal with this, and let me just quickly respond to some of those. Some have suggested that the commission tighten up our own operating procedures to move more quickly through the hearing process, to which I say there's room for improvement everywhere, as always, and it's a dual responsibility. So the CONSCOM can and will focus more narrowly on whether applications can be approved under the applicable performance standards. And I'm reminding commissioners to try to strive to keep their inquiries and their review during hearings focused on performance standards and what conditions need to be required in order to approve a project. Other avenues of inquiry, while interesting or desirable under the circumstances, probably are not advisable to do. But applicants need to also be aware of their responsibility to make sure that the applications that they submit are complete with all materials needed so that the commission doesn't have to repeatedly request supplemental materials and then continue hearings when those materials should have been supplied. So as I say, the responsibilities are all around. If we all work better and smarter, not necessarily harder, we can get through this process. Another suggestion was made that the commission move to hold weekly hearings. We have thought about that. We are willing to do that, but we lack sufficient resources, particularly in the form of town staff, to do this. If the town provided more staff, even on a contractual basis, we might be able to adjust our schedule to move through applications faster and hold more hearings. At the moment, however, it's simply not possible. We've looked around and the situation in other towns vary. Some have had no hearings whatsoever since early March. Others who are moving through their workload pipelines have full-time staff to support their commission. So it's a two-way street on that too. We would do that if there was enough resources. So the bottom line is we do understand and appreciate your frustrations and disappointments. But please, let's not lose sight of the context in which we're having this discussion. In the midst of a pandemic that has closed most businesses, suspended town operations, resulted in 33 million people losing their jobs and their health care in the midst of a pandemic, and taken more than 80,000 lives, the problems of scheduling reviews and hearings so that applicants can get a hearing date in the near term simply pale in comparison. We're doing the best we can under these extraordinary circumstances. We appreciate your continued patience and your cooperation as we move slowly but surely forward. We'll do our jobs. And to all those who represent applicants who have matters pending before us, do yours and we will all get through this. And with that, we're going to move into the agenda for today.
Okay, the first item up is a field change request, 178 Old Harbor Road, also known as 168 Old Harbor Road, Lot B. Eastward Companies Business Trust is the owner, SC 103379. Request to reduce size of the proposed in-ground pool, change the orientation of the pool from being parallel with the back of the house to perpendicular to the house, and reduce the size of the patio in the 50 to 100 foot buffer.
Okay, well, it's unusual to receive a request to reduce the size of the structures and hardscape in the buffer zone. But I certainly don't have a problem reducing that impact, and I'm pleased to see that there's no proposed change in the mitigation. So does anybody else have any questions or comments on this request? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the request for field
Actually,
change?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get my audio on.
Oh,
This is
there you go.
Bob.
Hi, Bob. Okay.
Or did I miss, or is it documented the change in the coverage as a result of the proposed change?
Hi, Bob, this is Callie. It's in that cover letter that Eastward Companies put together from Susan Ledoux. It's not in that classic chart that you guys are used to seeing, but based on that cover page, it looks like a 20 square foot reduction in the size of the pool and 124 square feet reduction in the patio.
Yeah, I did see that. I'm just, normally we're sticklers for making sure the record shows what was changed, and this is basically in the form of a memo.
Yeah.
Not what we normally do, but I'm okay with the idea. I'm just making a procedural point.
Well, I would think that the site plan has been updated, correct? I have to pull it up here. I don't have it in front of me.
I think Susan Ledoux is also on the call today.
Yeah.
I am.
Susan?
I wasn't sure if I could talk or not.
Yes, you may turn on your camera, you may unmute and
Yeah.
join us in this.
Okay. All right. I'll do. You can hear me. Yeah. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, I did not know with the field change you'd want the traditional table, but I have submitted revised site plan, revised landscape plan, both reflect the change in the coverage numbers. Yes, to answer that question.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Holt. Where are the numbers referenced in the plans? I see the revision, it says revision, revised plan and patio, reduced plan and patio.
On the left side of that plan, it says 52. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. It doesn't show the change in the number?
Yeah.
I guess you would have.
Well,
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we didn't, we didn't ask them to show the change in the number. I just did the math in the memo. So that's. Did I lose you?
No, we're here. I just put up the site
Oh.
plan.
Yeah. Yeah, so they showed on the left side, as you can see, that they show what the new numbers are. They didn't show the change in the numbers. If you'd like that, I can submit that as an addendum to go with the field change request. I don't have a problem. I can get that to Callie today.
Okay, so but the numbers you have there those are the numbers with this change?
Yes, they
Okay,
are.
okay.
Yeah, we went from 2126 square feet coverage to 2002 square feet. So it's a reduction of 124 square feet coverage.
Okay. Dee Dee and Bob, would you want Susan to make that clearer on the site plan and have that sent over to Callie? Would that?
I think it would close the loop.
Okay, because it is a plan of record, so it would show
Right.
the change as opposed to just the result.
Susan,
Okay.
is that something you can send over to me electronically this morning or this afternoon?
So just to be clear, do you want your traditional table to show those numbers? I can do that myself. Otherwise, if you wanted it shown on the site plan, I'd have to involve Clark Engineering. That's the only difference. So I can do the table easily enough and get that to Callie this morning.
Is that sufficient? If the table is updated?
So does that table become part of the plan of record?
It becomes part of the record, not part of the plan.
Okay.
Other questions or concerns, comments? Is there a motion to approve the field change request?
Commissioner Holt, so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to approve the field change request. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's approved unanimously.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay, the request for determination of applicability, 158 Old Field Bend, Andrew Wiley, proposed removal of storm damaged trees, removal of invasive vines and Japanese knotweed, pruning Leland cypress and pruning limbs around house and driveway, and 158 Old Field Bend, Assessor's Map 14J, parcel R60.
Okay, Tim, can you want to unmute yourself and?
Alrighty, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
All right. So this is, the request is to remove the two trees that are partly over.
Yeah.
Prune the limbs that are overhanging the driveway. But the thing that gets a little bit more complicated is the proposal to remove the invasives, the knotweed, bittersweet, and in the front, which are partly on the coastal bank and partly in the no disturb zone.
Yeah.
And the black locusts in the back that are in the buffer zone. What we have comments or questions from commissioners about this proposal?
This is Commissioner Clark.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
I had two questions. excuse me. I noticed on the hand-drawn plan, there's a reference to top, and there's also a reference to land subject to coastal storm flowage. Under state guidance for both those delineations, there are particular steps that must be followed, at least according to the guidance, and those aren't done here. So I just note that, and which leads me to be concerned that neither one of those designations are accurate.
This is Commissioner Holt. Yeah, to that point, we really should have a current plan with the delineation of the wetland and the new 50 and 100.
I would agree, as well as it's a little bit complex because you have a vegetated wetland, you have land subject to coastal storm flowage, and I have to say a little bit confused about the delineation of a coastal bank, and I presume that was done in accordance with the DEP guidelines. I guess I think it's 92.1-1. That it's delineated in accordance with its slope. But this property is a good half-mile away from any coast. So it's not clear to me why that's an appropriate delineation there. Nonetheless, as Tom points out, I think that the work, aside from the removal of the trees and the hanging limbs that arguably pose a safety issue, any further landscape management in this front part of the house, in these areas that are resource areas, need to be done under a notice of intent for the impact that they're going to have on those resource areas once we are clear on where the resource area delineations are.
Okay.
If that's okay, yeah.
Yeah, if I can interject. So we're going to have a larger project that we're going to be doing here over in the coming year. And so this was really just to clean the place up so we could see what's going on. So if there's things that you don't want done right now, and we can put those into the next plan, there will be a new site plan made. We're going to delineate the wetland. We do have that all, in motion, but we realize it's going to take some time. I just want to get the place cleaned up. And when we clean the trees out that have fallen or that are dead, they're going to just pull. I mean, there's so many vines attached to them now that's why I included them, because by the time we pull those out, it's going to remove a large percentage of the vine and everything up at the top of that bank near the house anyways.
Can't you just cut those vines before you remove the trees so that they don't pull everything?
Right.
Yeah, I think our concern is having a larger scale impact on removal of vegetation on that bank.
Yeah, so we'll just cut the vines. We won't be pulling them as far as like ripping them out, but cutting, and there'll be a large amount of mass that's coming out. But everything will be cut. There won't be anything that won't, be ripped out, so to speak. We'll cut and get it out of there. It's all going to come out by hand. There's no equipment going in there.
Okay. Dee Dee, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
There's 2 trees only, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Yep.
So there's the large pine that's up right on the deck.
Right.
And then there's the small dead one that's as you're coming up the driveway on the right-hand side.
So what's the large mass that you're referring to? If it's only 2 trees.
Well, so where that pine is, when you look at that area, there's a lot of vine in there. That's the massive vine I'm talking about. And we're going to cut right across the area we're going to work. We're going to go right across the front of the deck, right where all the Japanese knotweed is. And so we'll work that area and then drag it out across that flat spot. And so that's the area that, it's going to get, have the most work done. And as you're coming up that driveway on the right-hand side, there's a lot of vine and all the trees that we're going to prune overhanging the driveway. So we'll just clip those so that they're out of the trees. That was the intent. So no major work. It's really just a cleanup.
At this point, I think that, all right, thank you, Tim. We get that. It would be my recommendation that we allow the removal of those 2 trees, cutting the vines that are attached to them so that when the trees are pulled out of the site, it's not pulling up a lot of vegetation with it. And the same with the pruning of the overhanging limbs. That's okay under this. Right. ask that you would, if you can revise your request for the RDA to limit it to those activities.
Sure.
And then as we move forward and a site plan is developed, we can expect an NOI for more work, including the invasive management
Okay.
of the area in the front and the removal of the locusts in the rear. There's also a reference in your proposal to potential installation of fiber rolls. And I don't think that is applicable in this, and that should probably be taken out too, unless you are thinking about fiber rolls for some reason here.
I think it was just a question as to whether or not that they should be put in if, if we were doing all that work, if it's something that should be put in as just as a precaution.
As a erosion and sedimentation.
Right. But if we're really not clipping all the vines and we're going to revise this, then we'll put that into the notice of intent.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Holt. The Leyland cypress, then you're pruning those?
Yeah.
So, Janet, did you mean that would remain as part of this RDA?
If that can be done simply through pruning without other disturbance, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the locust will be removed from the RDA.
Yep.
Okay, this is Callie. Tim, can you send me over the revised scope today?
Yes.
Or tomorrow?
Yeah, I can do that.
Definitely before the start of work.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely before the start of work. I won't start till you have it.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Is there anyone else on the commission that wants to comment? I just want to double check because we're on a remote platform.
I had one question. This is Commissioner Clark.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
On the pine trees, do I understand that you're going to remove the pine trees, the ones that are described as broken pines?
Yes. The two, there's one that's down on the deck and across the front, and then the other is a dead one as you're coming in, leaning over. So yeah, I was going to remove those.
Are you going to leave the root systems in place? You're going to cut them off like at ground level?
Cut off at ground level. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This
All
is
right, so
Commissioner Del
Oh,
Vecchio.
go ahead, Bob. Yep.
I just had a question on the Japanese knotweed. When was that proposed to be, cut and wiped? I think late summer, early fall is the best time to do that, Tim.
That's
Right.
right. And so that's why it's going to be covered under a notice of intent.
Yeah.
Once the owner has the site plan done, then we'll cover it there. It can't be done till the fall anyway.
All right, terrific.
Thanks. All right, so anticipating the revised RDA coming in today, do we have a motion for a negative determination based on that narrower scope?
Yes, Commissioner Holt, move a negative determination for the RDA, referring only to the removal of the two down pine trees and pruning of trees over the driveway and the Leyland cypress.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote on the negative determination of a limited scope. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Del Vecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Unanimous approval of the negative determination.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. I'll get that over to you guys today.
Okay, thank you.
Request for determination of applicability. This is 324 Shore Road. CBI as the owner, as the applicant, Capital Properties as the owner. Proposed removal of existing landscape plantings, proposed replanting of landscape around the dwelling at 324 Shore Road, Assessor's Map 16E.
Okay, Nick, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Nick Crawford from Crawford Land Management. So this is the Octagon House, as it's referred to. I'll try to keep it pretty brief. Currently, right now, the existing landscaping on site is kind of a mix between native and ornamental species. This planting plan basically proposes the replanting of the area with a hybrid of native and a few ornamental species. There's no changes to the hardscape or paving or anything like that. This is strictly just a replacement of the existing plant material, just because it's a lot of it's not doing well. A lot of it hasn't survived, and it could honestly use some freshening up. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you guys have.
All right, thank you, Nick.
Yep.
Questions or comments from commissioners?
Commissioner Clark?
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
In looking at an aerial photograph of the site, I noticed what appears to be I call it a gash. It's probably a foot trail through the dune going down
Yep.
to the saltwater. I think it would be that I always worry about such things because if you have a high tide, particularly a severe storm, it provides a pathway to destroy the dune or some of its benefits for storm control and erosion control. And so I was hopeful that the owner would see fit to address that in terms of the extent to which it's been appears stripped bare according to the aerial photograph I looked at.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an existing path to the beach. It's the only access for this property since there's no other access. It's been on previous site plans and plans of record. So, I think they would very much like to maintain that footpath to the water as opposed to, any other form of access to the water, whether it be a catwalk or a boardwalk. I think this is definitely the path of least resistance, so to speak, for disturbance of the area.
I would personally, I mean, you make a good point, but I would think that there would be some things that could be done that would reduce the extent of erosion.
I mean, I can certainly speak to the owner about trying to narrow the path so that maybe it's not so wide in some spots. But at this point in time, they weren't looking to address that. So it's outside of the project scope.
Yeah, it is, and it's been on the record. But Tom, you raise a good point, and we should be thinking about ways to address the potential risks that are posed by pathways, because we see them all the time.
Yeah, I can certainly mention it and see if they'd be interested in closing the gap a little bit.
Yeah, since someone's going to be there doing the landscaping anyway, that would be a good time to try to narrow it a bit. Okay. My question has to do with the plant schedule that's showing on the plan that Callie has up. It's a little hard to see, but I know it says TBD for the sizes of the shrubs.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. So Callie had gotten a hold of me and let me know some of her comments, and one of them was the TBD. I was going back and forth with the owner about the sizes of the plantings. We decided on the smaller sizes of the two sizes. So instead of very large shrubs going in, there'll be 3 and 5 gallons. So I can certainly make a note that all the woody plant material will be 3 or 5 gallon, and all the perennials are 1 gallon pots.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Yes, this is Bob Rawls.
Yes, Bob.
The property is completely within the NDZ. Is that true?
I'm not looking at. Hold on, I can bring up the site plan. I believe it's all just off the top of my head. It's all within buffer, but I don't know that the entire thing is within a resource area.
Here it is. Nick, Callie's got it up.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely all within the 50-foot buffer to a coastal bank at the least.
Yep.
All right, so it was a little unclear to me. You said that the current vegetation that's going to be replaced is a mixture of natives and non-natives. And I thought I heard you say that you want to replace it with another mixture of natives and non-natives. But it would
Correct,
strike
there
me
are
as-
some,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, there are some, cultivars, to keep things at, you know, a lower height next to windows and stuff like that. But they are all, they will all attract pollinator species, most of the perennials. And hold on, everything's native to the northeast. Maybe not just to Barnstable County, but this is, I don't know if any of you were able to go out to the site and take a look at it, but 90% of the work that's being proposed is within, 15 feet almost of the front door of the house. So it's a very, manicured, so to speak, area. It's not, it's not integrated into a part of, something providing wildlife habitat at the moment. And a lot of the plantings that are there currently are dead or declining.
Well, okay, but I guess my point is that normally within the 0 to 50, we basically need to have all native species. And so.
Okay, I mean, currently what's there isn't all native.
What is currently there and what will be there after the work is done?
Well, at the moment, I haven't had eyes on it for a little while now, but at the moment, there's arborvitaes in there, there's knockout roses, there's, perennials that I couldn't tell were there since it was the winter. But all the replacement species are native to the Northeast or native to Barnstable County. So it's a more native landscape, but there is an oak leaf hydrangea, and there are a couple cultivars. There are 2 cultivars in the shrub list. So, it's more native than what's there now, with the arborvitaes, the knockout roses, there's some hawthorn. So it's definitely a more native landscape that we're proposing to be a replacement.
Okay, well, that's good. However, at least from my perspective, I don't see any reason, unless you can give me a reason, why they couldn't all be 100% native plants.
I mean, in the essence of saving time, I can, we can say that the species that are on here that aren't part of the Barnstable County checklist, gosh dang it, that we will replace those with a comparable native species.
As I looked at it, Nick, the only ones that really jumped out at me as not being on that list is the oak leaf hydrangea. And I think there are some species of hydrangea that are on the list that you could swap in for that. Just as a matter of policy, we're very hesitant, even though I know this is a voluntary project and it's not being offered in mitigation, in which case we would be totally strict, but allowing non-natives in the non-disturb zone is something that we generally want to avoid at all costs. Not
all right, we can certainly revise the species list so that hydrangea gets switched for more or less kind of an equivalent sized native woody shrub.
That would be good for me. Okay.
This is Kits here.
Hi, Joe. Yes.
We've had this discussion with the Bars Inn on several occasions, but I want to remind everybody that there's a real opportunity for education here. And so some kind of education tour or a signage that could go in there to inform renters about what the heck is going on would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I know that just kind of through the grapevine, I know that Chatham Bars Inn in general, with the larger restoration on the coastal bank, they had, I believe, a PR firm write up something for their guests, and I do believe that they intend to have something in their rooms about the continuing project so that the guests are aware of what's happening there.
That would be appreciated, and that would be an important enhancement. And I know that they've been
Yeah,
good about doing this. And to the extent to which this house either gets guests staying there or they're moving past it on their way to other residences of the inn, having those signs that it's a restoration of native plantings would be helpful.
Certainly, yeah. I don't know for sure, but I can talk with them and find out just exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
Janet, this is something else that I brought up to Nick in my email was there's subsurface irrigation there and on site.
Oh, yeah.
If he's going to be submitting a revised plan, I would recommend adding a note that the subsurface irrigation will not be extended
Right.
or expanded.
Yep.
That's fine.
Okay, you'll add that, Nick?
Yeah, I can just put that on the plan. I'll just
Okay.
do a substitute the hydrangea and then say that, any additional irrigation past what's already there will be temporary above ground.
Okay, and
And-
the specification on the sizes of the other shrubs. Those are, I think they're the three things that. And okay, yes?
I just noted in the work protocol, it says that a small mini excavator may be used. Is that really necessary in an area that is so small where really there's not an abundance of large shrubs anyway?
Only right next to the driveway above the stone retaining wall, there's some good-sized shrubs that form a hedge at the moment. So it's really for that and the arborvitae that are around the.
Okay. Can we limit it to that then in the material?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can we limit where the mini excavator would be used in the supplemental material you're going to provide?
Yeah, of course. We'll say it won't leave the driveway.
It'll be in the driveway area only.
Yep.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This is Mr. Delvecchio here.
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
The current lawn, that's gonna be taken out, correct?
There is no lawn on this property.
There are a few patches that I noticed, a few small patches that I noticed within the planting.
But by the time we're done planting the area and seeding, there won't be. It won't be there anymore.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think it was intended to be lawn. I think it's just some fescues that were in and around the previous plantings that were cut down at once upon a time, and now they're greening back up. So it's not going to be lawn, and I don't think it was lawn in the past. So there's no lawn being proposed.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, so similar to the last one, Nick, if you can get this revision to Callie today, we can go ahead and approve that based on the description of the changes to the proposal. Is there a motion for a negative determination based upon the amendments as presented today?
Yes, Commissioner Holt so moves.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Kitch, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote on negative determination based on the changes that were presented this morning. Commissioner Holt?
Aye.
Commissioner Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Unanimous approval of the negative determination. Thank you, Nick.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, amendments to orders of conditions, 687 Fox Hill Road, Christopher L. Gargone Jr., SC 10-3184, Phase 2 of the amendment process. Request to amend an existing order of conditions, SC 10-3184, to include proposed moving and raising picket fencing, replace carpet roses with knockout roses for delineation of meadow area, and locate existing arborvitae on approved site plan at 687 Fox Hill Road, Assessors Map 12M, Parcel C5.
Good morning, Teresa Sprague with Blue Flex Design is here. I'm not sure if Attorney Litchfield is on the call.
I am.
Okay, good morning, Bill. So we've submitted an updated site plan. At the final hour, an agreement was reached between Mr. Gorgone and his neighbor to the east regarding 2 of the arborvitaes that are shown at the southern portion of the privacy fence that was installed on the eastern portion of the property. You see there's an updated note on the site plan that says 2 trees located on the property line will be moved to the west, and the existing vinyl privacy fence would be adjusted accordingly. So that was one of the things that we were waiting on, was just for the neighbors to reach an agreement on the location of the arborvitaes. Additionally, Mr. Gorgone submitted some photos of the previously installed split rail fence that was located along the eastern portion of Fox Hill Road prior to the restoration work that was done on the property. He wanted to share with the commission that there had been a fence previously installed in that area, and he would like the commission to reconsider their position on the picket fence, mainly because he's concerned about problems with people parking along that area. And so the fence in that location prevents people from parking on the area along Fox Hill Road.
All right, thank you, Teresa. Before we get further into any conversation about this, I just want to remind the commission members, as well as the applicant, of some of the chronology that has unfolded. The order of conditions for the project that had been proposed was issued back in August of 2017. It included the removal of the split rail fence on the house side of the roadway and replacing it with a fence, a picket fence, located further closer to the house outside of the NDZ. And it also allowed, per the notes on the planting plan, although no reference that I could find existed in the order of conditions, for replacement of the picket fence, replacement of the split rail fence with a picket fence on the water side. In June of 2019, the conservation agent received reports of a violation with respect to the mitigation that had been approved for the project. Not only had not been installed, but in fact turf lawn was installed in the mitigation area, and split picket fences were installed on both sides. So we began this process with the report of a violation. We held an enforcement hearing on June 26th of 2019, at which point the applicant requested a change to allow a request to amend the order to allow some of the changes. And the commission went along with that, although in hindsight, given what we've endured since then, it probably wasn't the smartest decision we've ever made to allow that change, because since July of 2019, virtually with respect to the areas that we were most concerned about, which was installation of the fence and failure to plant the mitigation and installing turf lawn, nothing had changed. I understand and acknowledge that there's been an ongoing dispute with a budding neighbor affecting some of the plantings in the rear of the house, and that took a lot of time. But while we were waiting for that to sort itself out, these 2 larger issues of violations have continued and have not been addressed. At a hearing in March, the commission expressed its very clear view that we would not allow a picket fence to be installed where on the land side where it was. We don't really have anything, unfortunately, to say about the picket fence on the water side, since that appeared on the plan of record and apparently was approved by the fact that it was on the plan of record at the time. But at this point, it would not be appropriate to approve that. Just to Mr. Gorgon's submissions of the photographs, I'm just going to do a quick share to make the point that if you can all see this, on the left side is the split rail fence that existed before, and on the right side photograph is the picket fence that replaced it. And I think I can express the view of the commission members that they were startled and by this fence, and it is not what anybody would have expected to replace the minor split rail fence on the left side. I'm going to ask if somebody's in their car or doing something just to please mute yourself. If you're on your phones, make sure you do *6 to mute so we don't pick up all that background noise. At any rate, that's the difference here is very clear in terms of what was there and what is there now. So with that, other commission members, your views about where we are at this point?
Yeah, Commissioner Holt, I think we've really spent an awful lot of time on this to get nowhere. And so I would not approve this amendment.
Okay, others?
Here, totally agree.
Anybody else?
I agree with Dee Dee.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion then to deny the request for an amendment?
Yes.
Could I
Madam
clarify
Chairman?
things? I'm sorry.
Yes?
So again, Teresa Sprague here. So just in it to address, I completely understand the commission's position on the fence. Mr. Gorgon had asked us to ask the commission to reconsider based on the split rail fence. If the commission did not feel that they were able to approve the picket fence, Mr. Gorgon has then asked if the commission would consider approving a split rail fence to be put back in that location. For the picket fence to be removed and the split rail fence put back in the location. That's one thing. Additionally, Blue Flax Design unfortunately did not implement this plan. It was implemented by another landscape contractor, but my understanding, and I believe that landscape contractor has submitted reports to the commission that it was not turf lawn that was installed. It was indeed the seed mix that was specified in the approved plan. However, it had been maintained as turf lawn, meaning it was being mowed. And Mr. Gorgon has obviously agreed that that area will not continue to be mowed and it will be allowed to go back to the meadow that it was intended to be in the original plans. And then I believe there is still some planting that remains to be done. Mr. Gorgon understands that the order of conditions expires, I believe, in August of this year, but has assured me and Attorney Litchfield that that additional mitigation planting will be planted this spring. So we understand that there's still some mitigation planting that's outstanding, but that it will be completed. So those are just the three items. If the commission would consider a split rail fence in that location rather than a picket fence, and then just clarifying the fact that the mitigation continues to be underway and will be installed before the order of conditions expires.
Callie here, there are quite a few shrubs that were, a lot of the plantings, Teresa, that you had proposed in your original plan of record were not installed.
I do understand that. And again, I'm simply representing the client.
I understand. I just want to clarify that a lot of plants were not installed.
And if I could, Madam Chairman, Bill Litchfield, the chronology as you have presented is correct, but it was the applicant's view and our view that it was better to address all of the matters together. We apologize for the delay. As Teresa has said, it was not turf lawn. Mr. Gorgon fully understands that there is going to be a meadow there. There will be a pathway mowed once per year going down. We do think, however, that a split rail fence along the road would be better for the property owner and, for that matter, for the environmentally sensitive area, which is going to become a meadow. So I understand the commission's frustration. We certainly understand and acknowledge your position on the style of fence, but we feel that a fence along the road to deal with the parking problem would be useful. There is a neighborhood association dock immediately to the north, and there is overflow parking, which unfortunately does occur on the area which is proposed to be meadow. So we understand the commission's frustration, but hope that you would consider an amendment which would allow Teresa to go forward with completing the mitigation plan, with changing what has become sort of a turf lawn, notwithstanding the planting mix, into a meadow as originally approved.
Commissioner Holt, 2 comments. One is, why not just put a sign up like many places do? I know my neighborhood has a lot of signs up that say no parking, you know, on the side of the road. And secondly, the planting is right now. So if this doesn't happen now, the planting will not happen before the order of conditions expires. I mean, the NOI, yeah, the order of conditions expires. Those are my comments.
It will go forward forthwith.
It's also, I mean, there's also an issue with a fence that was supposed to be installed closer to the house under the original order. You know, the fence that was on the wetland side of the property was supposed to be, was approved to be a picket fence. The house on the upland side of the road, which used to have a split rail fence, was supposed to, in the original order, supposed to be moved closer to the house. And then everything between the road and the fence was going to be a meadow with a small path leading down. So, I mean, currently as it is now, it's a violation of the original order, the way that it stands.
No, we understand that. Obviously, that's how we came before you in July. I think that what Teresa has proposed in terms of the knockout roses up at the halfway up the hill, that change is a legitimate change, and really, from our perspective, the important issue is the location of the fence. I understand Commissioner Holt's comment on signs. Signs have their own. In an area like this, I'm not sure that signs would be as appropriate as they might be downtown. Signs can have their own environmental limitations.
Okay. Let me just see if I'm grasping where we are. So the part of the proposed amendment that actually still is before us is the change to the knockout roses. That I have not heard any objection to, nor would I expect any objection to that. The question for the commissioners, from what I'm hearing, is that would we prefer to go back to split rail fence on both sides of the road as pre-existing, or stick with what the order of conditions required and allow the picket fence on the water side and move the other picket fence up closer to the house? It would be just my preference is if what is being proposed is a split rail fence that is in line with what previously existed, I would certainly find that preferable to what is currently there. And I think it's actually preferable to moving the land side portion of the fence up closer to the house, because the water side is still, I think, a significant structure in a resource area that I don't think was envisioned at the time that order was issued. And if the kind of split rail fence that's shown here is what you're talking about, I think that would be, from an environmental perspective and a resource area protection perspective, infinitely preferable. I'd like to hear other comments about that.
Commissioner Holt, you're proposing, or you'd like to see a split rail fence on both sides?
I believe that's what was being proposed.
I was on the commission at the time that this project was conditioned in 2017, and we did not ask for a drawing of what the picket fence would look like. And I think a lot of us, I know I did, had in mind a picket fence like, I don't know, with much more spacing between the pickets themselves to really allow passage for wildlife, since there's really no purpose in that picket fence being over there. But anyway, that said, I would agree with the chair that a split rail fence on both sides and then move the current picket up to the house.
Or take it out altogether. I don't know. They haven't said what they would do with it, whether that would, they are proposing two fences, one picket up close to the house and a split rail along the road.
Only one fence on the landward portion of the lot was contemplated. The suggestion or the request was to move it from the approved location on the hill down toward the street. And just to clarify, I don't think that the applicant, and I think Mr. Gorgon may be available or on the phone. I'm not sure that
Hi, Bill. I'm here.
Thank you. I'm not sure that we suggested matching rail fences, and I think that's, the chair is suggesting that as an alternative, that we either live with the existing approved plan or that we have two rail fences, one on the landward side, one on the water side. I don't know whether that is anything Mr. Gorgon would contemplate doing. Obviously, there would be considerable expense in that.
Yeah, I appreciate the commission's consideration of all these matters, and I'll just, speak on as an apology for the delay. I understand that this has been a bit drawn out. Some of that I think is due to a delay from the surveyor's end, where we were asking Outermost Land Survey to complete a survey on behalf of the abutters request, which I complied with, and then that proposed probably a 4 or 5 month delay. And then at the advisement of my attorney, Mr. Litchfield, and of Blue Flax, we decided to propose everything together today once things were in order. So I don't want that to be interpreted in any sort of disrespect. And I think it's worth mentioning that I've been very much involved with this project, and there's many parties involved on my behalf and expense to try to accommodate the commission's concerns. So that I just want to say that respectfully. With regard to the fences, what took place in terms of the planting and mitigation is what was approved in 2017 on behalf of Blue Flax, and that is precisely what I have tried to accomplish here. I will say that the seed mix that was planted within the floodplain was within order, and I can assure you that that will be in meadow form, and it's growing today as I look at it right now. With respect to the arborvitae in the back, which I understand is less of your concern, but just in the spirit of being neighborly and accommodative, I have conceded to move those bushes westward towards my property and away from my abutters property, even though most of them are not on the abutters line. And then lastly, with respect to the fence, my understanding is that the picket fence was approved on the water side, which is what we did. And I didn't know there was any sort of concern with picket on the house portion of the land. So we put a uniform fence in place. I would be happy to replace that fence with a split rail fence if that would appease the commission. I would like to avoid each one of these structures is upwards of $10,000. So in all respect, considering how much money it actually has cost me with these sorts of hearings, if we could just remove the one fence and replace that with the split rail, which would be the portion on the house, that would be appreciated. And I am cost sensitive, and your consideration would be greatly regarded and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorgon. So I apologize. My misunderstanding of what was actually being proposed is to retain the split rail fence on the water side and replace retain the picket fence on the water side and replace the picket fence on the land side with a split rail.
Yes.
Or go with what the order of conditions originally provided and having the picket fence up by the house.
I guess this is Cal here. The issue is that the picket fence on the upward side of the road is in violation of the original order. That picket fence should have been up, was permitted to be up towards the house. And I have the planting plan from the original order ready to go. And I can appreciate Mr. Gargone's intention on his property to follow the original order. But unfortunately, a lot of the plants that Blue Flax designed for that property were not installed. And I can go ahead and put that up on the board, on the platform for the commission to review. But I guess here we are sort of again, just in terms of dealing with what's out there. One is this amendment for some changes, and the other is the original order that was out there that the commission, if you want to make changes to the fence and to the mitigation and location, that's an amendment. But that doesn't excuse the fact that there is violations of the existing permit, the original permit.
Ms. Harper, and I think this is Chris Gargone again, and I think Mr. Litchfield would agree that we have been very careful with this. If there was a misunderstanding when the picket fence was approved on the land side of the property, that it was also approved on the house facing side of the property, that was my misunderstanding. I think there was kind of a consensus misunderstanding there, and it wasn't any sort of intentional violation, to be fair. The other thing is that my understanding is that since there was a fence previously there, which was broken and rotted, and I would suggest at least 30 years old and truly broken, that I replaced it with a new fence. And I understand that there might be some sort of preference with respect to style. I never heard anything about critters until more recently, but my intention was just to replace the broken fence with a new, nicer looking, functioning fence. There are coyotes running around here. There are animals. There's a rabid raccoon that's actually running around the lawn. So my intention was just to replace a fence with a new fence, and the style preference and the critters and all those things kind of came about after the fact. I still have every intention, and I can show you candidly multiple emails where I've asked the landscapers to install the knockout roses. We asked them to do that as recently as October, and they told me that that was not the right season to plant roses. I think that Teresa would agree, but that order is in the works, and the so-called violations, I was not under the impression that they were violations because the plan is still in order until August.
Point of order, here we go again, spending how much time on this? And
Agreed. Mr. Gargone, let me just say this once. Sorry, Didi. Let me just say, a violation does not carry with it the implication that it's deliberate. A violation of an order is something that is done that is not in compliance with the order. And it's not really relevant to us what your understanding is. We look at the approved plan, it says proposed picket fence in the location that is shown. The fact that it was installed somewhere else means it was not complied with. Ergo, it's a violation. We want to address that violation. I think at the end of the day today, given all of this, all we really want to do is move forward with the plan as it was approved, for better or for worse, like it or not, and nobody's 100% happy with it, but that it was approved, and that's what we're going to require that the applicant do. At least that's my recommendation. So I need my recommendation would be to, again, deny this request for an amendment, perhaps with the single exception of the switch of the knockout roses and the changes to the arborvitae in the rear. And
Madam Chair, will you be accepting public comment?
No, I will not at the moment.
Well, I represent the abutter to the west.
All right, you have it.
To the east.
Yes, you identify yourself, please. You have a right.
Jamie Norcross representing Paula Alveri and Jose Velez. They own 21 Basking Harbor, which is the immediate butter to the east. And correct that Mr. Gargone has agreed to move 8 trees over that were actually planted on my client's property with the arborvitaes, but my clients still do share some concerns with these plants. You cannot tell from the Blue Flags plan because the floodplain line is not carried forward. But if you go back to the original Clark Engineering site plan, about 2/3 of these arborvitaes are actually planted within your jurisdiction.
Jamie,
And
give me 1 second. I want to put up the old site plan so
Sure.
we can follow along. Just 1 second. I apologize.
It's all right.
Okay, I got the site plan up, Jamie, with the
Sure.
original order.
Thank you, Kelly. And my client's concern is, again, while they are going to be moved over onto Mr. Gargone's property, albeit very slightly, that these arborvitaes, as they've been pulled by their landscaper, grow to a girth of 12 to 18 feet at the bottom. And so in a very quick fashion, they're going to grow over onto my client's property. And if they don't want the encroachment, they're going to be forced to cut them back. So they question whether these types of plants are really appropriate in this area. They're concerned if they do have to trim them back, that they have to come to the commission to get approval to do that for the arborvitaes that are in their location or in their jurisdiction. And they're also concerned with, if you look at the very southern end of the property, you see there are 2 rows of arborvitaes that are planted between the shed and my client's fence. And while these circles are smaller, I believe that's just so they can include the sheer number of plants that have gone in down there. The species are the same, and so you can expect the same girth when they're fully grown, which they again are concerned are going to cause issues with damaging their fence and running over the property line. So they understand the applicant has a right to install some privacy plantings. Just wonder if a different species would be more appropriate, a native species perhaps, that would not cause an ongoing impact to my clients in terms of maintenance of their property from the encroaching plants. Thank you.
If I could, Madam Chairman, Bill Litchfield, we appreciate Mr. Norcross's comments. Of course, as he knows, not all of the 8 trees were planted on his client's property, and those to the south are on yet a 3rd property and are not really the subject of the issue. As Commissioner Holt said, your commission has spent a great deal of time on this issue, and it is my sense that the primary question before you is whether the fence down along Fox Hill Road is going to be a split rail fence in that location or a picket fence further up the hill, and that's what the commission has to decide. We feel that a rail fence along Fox Hill Road is the better course, and that would be coupled with the knockout rose change. And I thank you.
Thank you. All right. Does any commission member wish to make a motion at this point? And
Yeah, Commissioner Holt, I move denial of the amendment request.
Commissioner Kitts, second.
all right, having been made and seconded, I'll take a roll call vote of the motion to deny the request. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So unanimously, the request for the amendment is denied. Moving forward, we still have the issue of resolving the violation, which I repeat is not necessarily indicative of an intent to violate. Nonetheless, a fence has been installed where it has not been permitted to be installed. Changing to a different structure in that location would require a new filing. It's my recommendation that we simply issue an order requiring compliance with the order of conditions as it was issued.
Do you want a motion for that?
Yeah.
So moved. Mr.
Second.
Holt.
Kitts.
Roll call vote on issuing an enforcement order to require removal of the fence, removal of compliance with the mitigation requirements and all other requirements of the original order of conditions. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We will issue that today.
We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to Do you want to just do the last amendment before taking a break, or?
Yeah, we still have 15 minutes before we need to
Okay,
make a break, so.
okay. 38 Briggs Way Nominee Trust, SE 103196. This is phase 1 of the amendment process. Proposed relocation of approved elevated stairway to the location of the existing stone steps at 38 Briggs Way, Assessors Map 17D, Parcel B1.
Thank you, Callie. All right, reminder again, this is phase 1, so our inquiry is limited to the relationship of this proposal to the order of conditions as issued. Who is addressing this today?
David Clark here from Clark Engineering.
Hi, David. We were a little bit confused. Maybe you can walk us through how this changes what was originally ordered and issued.
Geez, I thought it was pretty straightforward.
Well, there's a confusion about the. Go ahead.
The side of the property, and now we're asking for them to be moved to the north side of the property.
So when this order was issued, were there existing stairs across or atop the revetment?
There's existing stone steps on the north side of the revetment.
All right. So Callie's pulling it up now. Where that says existing stairs on the site plan, those are the stone steps that are essentially carved into or become part of the revetment at grade of the revetment?
Yes.
Okay. So what this order allowed then is the construction of this aluminum stairway over those existing stairs?
No, it was originally located on the south side of the property where a dock and pier were proposed.
Okay.
That's where the deep water was. So now that the pier was withdrawn, but the commission went ahead and approved the stairs as well as ZBA. It really doesn't make sense to put them there. They're more appropriate to be put where the existing stone steps are on the north side.
Okay, so they were never installed on the south side?
No.
Okay. Okay. Now, thank you for clarifying that. I was not clear that I don't see that in this plan, so that clarifies that. All right, commissioners, with bearing in mind that this is just a phase 1, it strikes me that this bears the requisite relationship to the order and is appropriate for a request to amend. Are there questions or comments? Is there a motion? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, Dee Dee.
I'll move that we allow this to move forward as an amendment.
Kitzer, second.
All right, thank you. Is there I'll do a roll call to vote to approve phase 1 of the request. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so the request is permitted, and we'll move on to phase 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Callie, let's keep going.
Okay, 40 notices of intent, 440 Cockle Cove Road, Mark F. and Sherry L. Reith, SE 10 3408. Proposed reconstruction of existing bulkhead and rock scour protection at 440 Cockle Cove Road, Assessors Map 5B, Parcel 19. Really, the only item here for the commission left to discuss is that updated letter from the state, and I think that needs to be read into the record.
Okay, let me pull that up.
If you want, I can do it, or if you want.
Yeah, go ahead if you have it, because I don't have it up in front of me at the moment.
Okay. This is from dated April 30th. I'm just going to share it here real quick. This is dated April 30th from NHESP, the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program of the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. To the division, received a notice of intent with site plans dated 3/27/20 in compliance with the Rare Wildlife Species section of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR 10.37. The division also received the MESA review checklist and supporting documentation for review pursuant to the Mass Endangered Species Act regulations 321 CMR 10-10.18. The division has determined that the proposed project is located within the actual habitat of the piping plover. A species state listed as threatened in accordance with the MISA. The species and its habitats are protected pursuant to the WPA and the MISA. Fact sheets for state listed species can be found on the mass.gov website. The purpose of the division's review of the proposed project under the WPA regulations is to determine whether or not the project will have an adverse effect on the resource area's habitats of state listed species. The purpose of the division's review under the MISA regulations is to determine whether a take of the state listed species will result from the proposed project. Wetlands Protection Act, WPA, and Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, MISA. Based on the information provided and the information contained in our database, it is the opinion of the division that this project, as currently proposed, must be conditioned in order to avoid adverse effects to the resource area habitats of state-listed wildlife species 310 CMR 10.37 and must be conditioned in order to avoid a prohibited take of state-listed species 310 CMR 10.182A. The following conditions must be met to protect state-listed species and their habitats. 1, time of year restriction. All work, equipment, staging, and construction associated with the bulkhead installation, rock scour protection, and nourishment, including maintenance, shall not be conducted on the coastal beach during the period of April 1st to August 31st, unless otherwise approved in writing by the division. Nourishment. Immediately upon completion of the bulkhead installation and the rock scour reconstruction, and initial deposition of at least plus or minus 9 cubic yards of compatible sand shall be deposited on site. Future nourishments shall be conducted in accordance with the nourishment plan. 3, authorization duration. This authorization is valid for 5 years from the date of issuance. Work may be completed at any time during the 5-year period in compliance with the conditions herein. Thereafter, the applicant shall refile under the MISA. 4, notice. Upon filing for renewal, extension, or amendment of the order of conditions, the applicant shall contact the division for written response regarding impacts to resource area habitat of state-listed wildlife. Provided these conditions are included in any approving orders of conditions issued by the Conservation Commission, the applicant complies with all the above noted condition, the project will not result in an adverse impact to the resource area habitats of state-listed wildlife species pursuant to the WPA, and will not result in a prohibited take pursuant to the MISA. A copy of the final order of conditions shall be sent to NHESP simultaneously with the applicant as stated in the procedures section of the WPA. We note that all work is subject to the anti-segmentation provisions of the MISA. This determination is a final decision of the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife pursuant to 310 CMR. Any changes to the proposed project or any additional work beyond that shown on the site plans may require an additional filing with the division pursuant to the MISA. This determination is valid for 5 years. The project may be subject to further review if no physical work is commenced with 5 years from the date of issuance, or if there is a change to the project. Signed, the Assistant Director.
Thank you, Callie. Having received those, it's my recommendation that we will be incorporating those conditions into the order of conditions for this project. Are there other questions or comments from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Clark.
Yes, Tom.
I had a question about what, if anything, additionally would be done to protect the shellfish habitat, which the letter from the Division of Marine Fisheries notes, dated March 10th, by the way, of 2020.
It's Don Monroe, representing the applicant. Can
Yes,
I
Don.
speak to that?
You may speak to that.
Yeah, we showed you a limit of work, and on that limit of work, we'll place silt fencing to keep any materials that might adversely or unforeseenly go into the water and resource area that might be shellfish habitat. But keep in mind that most of this work is out of actual shellfish habitat. So we will try to protect any errant materials that might inadvertently go out into the area. So I think that would suffice to take care of that.
Callie, do you have the letter? Are there conditions that were suggested in that letter that we can put into? Go ahead.
I do have that here. DMF offers the following comments. And basically what Don was just speaking to is a bottom weighted silk curtain shall be installed around the perimeter of the bulkhead. Spills during refueling. Containment techniques shall be used to prevent construction debris from entering the marine environment during construction. And that's the limit of work line that Don was mentioning.
Okay, so these conditions will also be incorporated into the order of conditions.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Holt, I just had a note on my plan. At the last hearing, we discussed adding some plantings at the top of the bulkhead to just hold those that stand in place up there. Yeah, up there. And I had a note that just said show plants on a plan in that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anything was, oh, here we go. On section AA, it looks like, Don, can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, on the revised plan that we submitted, we noted that there's planting above the wall in section AA. We can plant along the whole top of it because that's what was originally there. There was originally some beach grass along the top, but because of the failure of the bulkhead and the loss of material behind the bulkhead, the owner's been consistently placing sand, but it's being lost, so no vegetation can take place until we take hold because the sand falls out so fast. So once the bulkhead's installed, the new one, then we'll have a sealed area where we can fill the material back to its level and then plant it. So every intent is to plant beach grass along the top of the whole bulkhead.
Okay, and I guess I didn't see the revised plan. So great, done.
We'll add that as a condition as well, be it specifically in the order.
Thank
you. Don, is it possible to just add a little note here if it's not already in your notes here that basically reiterates that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Then,
we can make another note there.
Yeah, just make another note and then we can reference that final revised plan in the order.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right, with those changes, then it'd be my recommendation that we schedule this to go forward to the work session on June 3rd for preparation and review and approval of an order of conditions. Is there a motion?
Commissioner Holt, so moved.
Commissioner Kitts, second.
Thank you. Roll call to continue this to the work session for the order of conditions. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Pitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We will take this forward to the June 3rd work session. Thank you, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, everyone.
All right. At this point, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Mark or Ryan, whoever is monitoring us.
one.
All right, we're back. And moving on, Callie, do you want to read the next item on the agenda?
Sure. 100 and 102 Cedar Street, Matthew and Susan Botine, SC 103410. Proposed installation of a natural gas line, open pergola, seasonal kayak rack, repair, replace existing stairs, patio and fence, upgrade an outside grill area, and landscape improvements at 102 Cedar Street, Assessors Map 13C, Parcel 10.
All right, thank you. Before we dive into any more questions on this, let me just refresh us. When we last heard this was March the 10th, at which point we asked for field staking, more detail on the patio construction and a work protocol for the pergola, details on the pruning, cutting, and trimming that was proposed. We've received the letter from Sorbello Landscaping that addresses some of those issues, but there's a bit of uncertainty about whether a subsequent site plans had been submitted. Some commissioners said they had received a hard copy and a small version of it. Others did not. So let's start with Thad, and can you clarify whether there has been any site plans that have been updated or revised?
Hi, Thad Aldridge here, East Southeast. Not sure if Alan's on the phone. The Callie was able to get a picture of one of these site plans that was apparently sent, and it was the original site plan. No site plan was updated to be sent.
Okay, so what we had in front of us in that large version on March 11th is still the site plan of record. That's the one we're still working with. Okay, so unclear where the smaller version came from, but it can be disposed of because it's just a small copy of the one that we've had and that we're continuing to work with.
Yes.
Okay, so
Just so you know, Madam Chair, it came to me at the same time that I got the copy of the new plan for dealing with the plants and the invasives, et cetera.
okay, so with the hard copy of the Sorbello Landscaping letter, it came with that?
Yes, when it was sent to me.
Okay. It is possible that Mr. Sorbello included it with his copy.
I reviewed that with him this morning, and he didn't include anything. We
Oh.
actually got the letter from him and submitted that.
Okay, well, it will remain a mystery without a solution at the moment, but with that clarification, Thad, what would you like to address to the commission?
I thought we had dealt with the work protocol regarding the pergola. We were talking about planting posts that are in the existing patio. That patio is going to be lifted. The base is going to be reconditioned. The stones are going to be placed back down. They are going to be cut. That cutting can occur in the driveway, which is outside of jurisdiction, and posts are just going to go into the ground at the same time. All the work can be done from the driveway, again, outside of jurisdiction. And the purpose of the pergola is just to provide some shade out on a very sunny patio. It's open, so it's not going to change the drainage patterns, and we didn't think it warranted a full. One commissioner had questions of dry wells. There is a dry well shown on the plan at the end of the driveway. When the patio for the main house was reconstructed, it was discovered that it was impervious material. When there was a field change requested at the time and it was reconstructed pervious, the downspout that comes in under there was tied into this dry well along with all of the downspouts on the north side of the building. The downspouts coming off the south side of that building at the garage, we believe are under the walkways and not recoverable. And then the specifications on the landscaping were provided. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
This is Commissioner Clark. I had a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
It looks like going into the dry well, it's a designation that I usually see related to septic tanks, but I understand that the building has sewer. Is that correct?
Yes,
So the only thing going into the dry well is the runoff from the roofs?
yes, it is.
Thank
There
you.
was also a trench drain put in around the building itself in order to keep the basement drier. There are some clays in the area that were keeping the water purged. So along the entire north edge of the building and the east and part of the south, there is a drain there that goes into this dry well. The dry well is large. It is a 6x6 pit. It's what you would see in a 1978 Title V, or you would see it in a road construction project. That is also deep, so it's not really we don't have to worry about it breaking out. It's so far from the slope. But it is also deep, so we don't have to worry about those pressures building up.
When you say deep, how deep might that be, if you know?
The top was 8 or 10 feet down. I mean, it was really,
Oh, really? Okay.
it was down to pick up the runoff. It was to keep the basement dry. So there are perforated pipes going around the building at the basement slab level, feeding into this.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments from other commissioners?
Yeah, Commissioner Holt had I guess some things about the landscape. The landscaping that is to be done, if we can call it that. I guess it's not a bank restoration, but it sort of is a modest one. Is that my understanding? And they're going to be topping a bunch of several cedars on the bank.
How many cedars are on the bank?
You should know.
That actually points up an issue, Thad, which is that this description that came from Cerbella Landscaping notes, at least to my knowledge, for the first time, that the coastal bank is dominated by invasives and proposes removal of the invasives and the plantings that are listed there. As Dee Dee just noted, it's, while not exactly rising to the level of a bank restoration project, it has many of those elements. What it doesn't have is a specification of exactly what's going to be removed and where it's currently located, and where the proposed plantings are going to be located. It's something of this magnitude, the nature and scope of this would normally require a land management plan and a planting plan that specifically locates all of these materials, particularly on a significantly steep coastal bank.
Would the commission be more comfortable if we were to withdraw the landscaping on the bank, come back with a more robust land management plan under a new order, and continue forward with the other improvements proposed?
I would.
Yeah, because
I think this is a much bigger project than what you're talking about.
But would that also involve removing the work for the proposed doing the stair work in the kayak rack, or?
No, I'd still like to move forward with repairing the stairs and installing the seasonal kayak rack.
As well as the proposed outdoor kitchen on the main house and the bed of hydrangeas and the fence replacement repair.
If we keep all of that and we just delay the implementation of a land management plan or landscape plan or any other work that's on the bank other than stairs, kayak rack, and so forth.
What assurance do we have that you'll go forward with the land management plan?
Well, it was voluntary to begin with, so even if he wanted to withdraw it completely, it wouldn't change things. I mean, it's not like we were looking for mitigation for any of these.
It was not offered as mitigation, right? Okay.
I noticed the kitchen replacement is being built in a do not disturb zone.
On top of existing patio.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything. It's on the patio.
Pushing it out of the do not disturb zone would require the removal of a tree that's not being proposed to be removed.
I guess the other question, if the commission decides to move forward with what Thad just said, the planting of 15 hydrangeas in the no disturb zone, we just had that same conversation with CBI earlier, and so you guys had mentioned to them to have native plantings there.
Yep. We did discuss this briefly at the hearing on March 11th. I don't think we resolved it, but given where we've gone since then and the conversations that we've had, I think it would be inappropriate for us to be approving non-native anything in the non-disturb zone, and particularly when there are available native species that can be planted there instead.
Then we'd like to keep the lawn.
What the lawn, is there currently lawn at that point? Is that?
Yes, that's turf lawn that goes right up to the existing fence.
I see.
The proposal is to replace the fence, which is at grade at the moment. We're proposing to replace it with a gap underneath for wildlife movement. The applicant would not like to see the base of the fence in that opening, and he wants to plant something there. As there are hydrangeas on the property and people kind of like them, that's what was proposed.
I see. I understand that. I know there are hydrangeas along the western side, along the top of the bank. But the fact that those exist and were allowed at some point by somebody, don't know who, don't know when, doesn't mean we have to allow an expansion in this area. And I understand that he would want to plant something in front of a fence, but I think that there are plenty of other available options for them rather
then we
than.
can trade it out to pasture rows.
Okay, I think, I think at this point, we're throwing out a lot of things that are going to happen in the future. And ultimately at this point, the plan of record becomes really important. So maybe the commission would be better to move forward. Like, would the commission allow this to be continued to the next work session as long as Thad can change his site plans to reflect the withdrawal of the pruning and all the bank work related to vegetation, but keep, what we've already talked about and maybe come up with something else for the hydrangeas?
Yep.
Sure.
Yep, that would work.
Is the next work session on the 20th?
No, it's another hearing on the 27th, but that way the commission can review the proposal.
No, I thought you said continue to the work session.
Well, the work session is June 3rd, so.
I was continuing it to a hearing.
Okay.
But
yeah, the hearing is before the work session anyway, so it would make sense to just do a quick 5-minute review at the hearing to make sure that the site plan has been changed to everybody's satisfaction, and then schedule it for the work session on the 3rd.
So withdraw the land management or the coastal bank work, replace the hydrangeas with a native plant species, still being allowed to manicure those as landscaping and not as naturalization.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, are there questions about any of the other proposals?
I had a question about one reference that was made in the landscaping letter, which is there was a reference to the bluff being damaged. And I was wondering what and where. First sentence in the top of the second paragraph.
Pulling that up right now.
Yeah, I believe, Tom, that what he's referring to as the bluff is the coastal bank. And the July 2019 storms, and it's plural, probably refers to the tornadoes, or the tornado winds that came through, as well as a couple of other storms that we experienced in July where we have seen tree damage across town. But that's just how I read that.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
that's
acquainted with that storm. It took out 5 of my trees.
Yep.
We lost a number as well.
But I was curious, I wasn't able to reference what exactly that was talking about, if that was just simply tree damage or if it was something more significant.
No, it was really just tree damage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So maybe when we get to that point, at some point in the future, when there's an NOI for that, we'll get more detail.
Dad, I just had a quick question. At the beginning, when you talked about the quote unquote work protocol for the pergola,
Yes.
is it possible to just maybe add that as a note to your plan?
Sure.
I didn't see that in writing anywhere. I may have missed it. But just so we have like a sentence or two about it.
It would be best on the plans.
Okay.
Thank you.
This Commissioner Holt, I just have a clarification question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
Thad, the kayak rack, the seasonal kayak rack is attached to the walkway, right? It does not have any supports going into the bank or the beach?
Correct. We bolt it right on to a pair of the posts that are already there.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
All right, with that, is there a motion then to continue this to May 27th for final review of the revised plans?
Commissioner Holt, so moved.
Commissioner Kitts, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote to continue to the 27th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We will continue this conversation and hopefully finalize it on the 27th. Thank you,
Right.
Thad.
Thank you and stay healthy.
You too.
Okay, the last notice of intent for today is 41 Locust Lane, Jonathan O. and Alicia W. Downs, SC 103407. Proposed removal of 5-bedroom existing dwelling, proposed construction of 5-bedroom dwelling, pool and septic system, proposed vegetation management, 41 Locust Lane, to Assessor's Map 15H, Parcel 53. Just as an update, at the last hearing, the commission voted to hire a third-party consultant to review the delineation of the inland bank. I have since I've found a consultant to do the work. I've coordinated with Stephanie Sequin, the engineer for the project, and that site visit is happening this Friday in the afternoon. And Stephanie and Teresa will be present at the site visit, along with myself and the third-party professional wetland scientist. So Stephanie's on the call. I did see her, so if she wants to make a comment, but my recommendation would just be to continue the hearing till the 27th so that the commission will have the short memo from the PWS to review.
Thank you, Callie. Stephanie?
Let me just see if she's
muted. Oh, she's still muted.
Oh, let me unmute her.
Okay, no, that was my fault. Hi,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yes, good morning,
All right.
Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie Sequin. Callie has kept me informed and as she progressed along here, so we will attend the site meeting on Friday. I would just like to ask if it's possible, we submitted some additional information that had been requested prior to the meeting in April. And can we get any feedback from the commissioners on that information that was submitted? And this is assuming that the consultant ultimately agrees with the assessment that I made on the inland bank. It would just be nice to get any sort of feedback on what was submitted prior to the meeting in April, so that we know in advance.
Okay, fair question. I'll be the first to say that given the uncertainty of where this would turn out, I haven't looked at anything else yet because of my hesitancy that in the event that the commission finds that it is an inland bank, then much of the proposal in terms of where the pool and the terraces would have to be removed or reconfigured in some significant way. So I did not want to spend time studying something. I will get that done before we take this up again on the 27th on the optimistic assumption that we're all in agreement as of that date and can move forward. So apologies, I can't give you any feedback today, but I will at that point. I don't know about anybody else who might have some feedback for Stephanie.
If I may, this is Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design. I wonder, just to help with that review for the next hearing, if we could just at least walk through the changes that were requested and the changes that we made to the plan, since it's been a while.
Okay, that's fine, actually. Yep.
So we had submitted revised plans dated April 15th, 2020. I'm not sure if Callie has those available.
I do. I'm just trying to pull them up. Sorry, Teresa.
Hang on, Teresa. Let's have it on the screen. So
yeah, no problem. Absolutely.
Just give me a minute. Are you talking, Teresa, about the plan, about the materials that you, with the site plan dated revised of 4/15?
Yes, we have a planting plan that would probably be easiest to follow along with. It's got a revised date, April 15th.
Yep.
Okay.
Pull that up. Yep, I got it here.
Thank you. So I can just very quickly walk you through this. I know you've got a long agenda. I don't want to hold up any more of your time, but just quickly, the things that the commission had requested prior to that April 15th submission was for us to flag all of the black locust trees that are proposed for removal, as well as locate them on the site plan. So I did go out and flag all of the trees, and Stephanie had her crew go out and locate them, and they're shown on the plan with the red X's. Additionally, the commission had asked for us to provide some details on the areas that we're proposing for typical landscaping. They're shaded in blue on our plan, and that planting has been completed. And we also submitted a supplemental plant schedule just for those areas there. One of the commissioners asked us to shade in the area of lawn. So we've done that. You can see it's in a very light green. Where lawn is proposed to the north and the south of the pool. And additionally, we've proposed a small area of lawn between the infinity edge, the trough of the infinity edge pool, and the mitigation restoration planting just for access, circulation, and maintenance. And a wall, we're showing a retaining wall with the elevations on the south side of the pool where we need to do a little bit of retaining. We had previously shown the retaining on the north side, but we do have to do a little bit of retaining on the south side. So that has been included on the plan. And then additionally, details were, you requested details for the pool, and the pool company also submitted those details. So I'm sure you have those in the file to review a section of the pool.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That helps in making our review more efficient.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, if there's any other conversation, comments, or questions, I would look for a motion to continue this to the 27th.
Commissioner Holt, I guess I would make a comment. I know we don't want to discuss this now. I think that there's good reason not to, but to just provide some feedback. I'm just wondering, the pool is right smack up against, it looks like the top of the bank there in the no disturb zone. I'm just wondering if that perhaps they could consider moving it to where the garage is and do some reconfiguring to provide whatever it is they need in terms of vehicle storage. So just again, so a comment for them to think about for next the next hearing.
Did you say, this is Stephanie Sequin, did you say the pool is in the no disturb zone? Because it's the limit of work.
Right up close to the no disturb zone, I think is what she was speaking of. So here's the no disturb line here. And I think Dee Dee was speaking to this area here, being very close to that line.
Okay.
Yeah, just Teresa Sprague, very briefly, one of the goals of this plan was to completely vegetate the 50-foot buffer. So it was definitely a design point to allow that 50-foot buffer to remain in an entirely vegetated state. So you can see the 50-foot buffer is the red line. It's kind of hard to see underneath the plants. And we planted a little bit beyond that into the 100. And then of course we're into the 100, which is shown as the blue line. I know that's still to be determined, and that's what we're meeting with Matt Creighton on Friday to determine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions?
I guess one of my just comments is a follow-up to Dee Dee. In your alternatives analysis, actually, never mind, forget it.
All right, is there a motion to continue this then?
Continue to May 27th.
Kitts, second.
Thank you. Roll call vote on continuing it to the 27th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Walls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We continued on the May 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie and Teresa.
Okay, violations, 107 Taylor's Pond Road, tree removal in and within 100 feet of resource areas.
Hi, Teresa Sprague again with Reflex Design. We submitted a revised plan based on our last conversation. Just very quickly, if you remember, we had submitted a plan showing restoration trees and a full restoration management plan. There was some concern with an abutter about the potential for views that he had previously had approval to maintain being blocked. So we worked with that abutter and with the property owners, the Donahues, and we submitted a plan revised May 4th, 2020.
Yep, just pulling that up here.
Yep.
Okay, great. So in our discussion, we had talked about removing a pitch pine and then relocating some of the oaks. So the view corridor area that was of a concern for the abutter, Mr. Driscoll, was between the shed and just to the west of the shed in that area. So we have removed we were proposing a large white oak in that area. We've relocated the white oak to the north of the house, where there was a previous white oak that had been cut. You can see there's a 17-inch white oak stump. We're proposing to plant another white oak in this area here. And then we planted beech plum in the area where there was a concern for the views just to the west of the shed. And then in addition, we had another red oak that we had proposed kind of squeezed in this area. We've moved that up to where that double 16-inch oak stump is showing on the western property line. And then we did remove one pitch pine. So the planting plan has been reduced by one pitch pine.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. In terms of the proposed restoration for the tree removal in the front of the house, So I'm looking at your plan. The white oak shown in the orange dot is what is proposed there?
I'm on mute again. Do you mean to the north of the house? So on
Yes,
the
on the north side, yes.
Yes, yep. So the white oak, oh, that's our image. So the white oak is proposed to move in this area where it looks like there was previously a white oak that was cut. So we've proposed to move that. We think it's far enough away from the house. Originally, we were thinking of putting the white oak just to the west of the house. We're concerned white oaks, as you know, get to be very large trees. A red oak gets large enough and it's going to be close to the house, but not as large as a white oak will get. So we've put the white oak to the north of the house, in the 100-foot buffer and in the general location of an area where there had been a previously cut oak tree.
And looking at your planting schedule, it says 2/3 inch caliper for that white oak. That's not 2/3 of an inch, is it?
No, it's a 2 to 3 inch.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So it's going to be, we're putting this in at a larger size than we would normally put in, and larger than what we would have recommended for putting into the area on the coastal bank. Again, because our goal is to minimize the amount of soil disturbance on the coastal bank, because most of these stumps are resprouting and have intact root systems. So what we're proposing to plant on the bank itself is a little bit smaller.
Okay. All right, questions, comments from commissioners?
Commissioner Delvecchio here.
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
I think it's fine. I mean, I agree with putting smaller plants by the shed there, just to try to secure that view. I like the plan, and I think it should be, I think we should go ahead and get it planted before it gets too warm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else?
Yeah, Commissioner Holt.
Yes, Dee Dee.
Hearing, we talked about somehow restricting that area on the bank because it's going to be 25, 30 years before the canopy, the mass is ever restored there due to what's happened. And since we're not able to plant any significant size or larger plantings, I think that the commission needs some kind of a guarantee that this area will be left alone, and eventually over time that it will basically go back to what it was before it was cut down.
So Teresa Sprague again. I guess I would rely on the fact that I understand a violation happened here, but the fact that it's actually a coastal bank already restricts it. As you know, this is any work on a coastal bank is required to come before the commission as a notice of intent filing, no matter how minor that work is, because it's located in the resource area. I believe the property owners understand that what they did was in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act and Chatham's local wetland regulations. So I think the fact that it's actually a coastal bank is
well, if I might respond right now, this property owner understands, but if this property is to change hands, I think that having some kind of a restriction will be just a further guarantee that this area will be left alone.
Before we there's a way of wrapping this part of the conversation up about how we ensure both performance of the restoration plan as approved and how we ensure that there's no further intrusion on the coastal bank. I just want to make sure that everybody is, we reach consensus on the nature of the restoration. Is there anything else on the plan itself?
I have a question, if I may.
Yes, Callie, go ahead.
To me, this just doesn't look like, I mean, there's probably, I think it was 60 plus trees that were removed, and I just don't see the same number here. I mean, this is sort of, we're going back to what we were talking about before, where they're trading trees for shrubs. And I know that the commission is now in a position where to plant in-kind trees would result in further destabilization of the bank. But two eastern red cedars, 2 pitch pines, 1 white oak, and 3 black oak, and shrubs, northern bayberry and beach plum, nowhere near meets the number of vegetation that was removed from the bank. And furthermore, there are some areas of like bare areas here, which I know based on the plan that they're going to be seeded with wildflower and grass seed mix. But I mean, there is already some ground cover there to begin with. So it just doesn't seem like a nice match for what was taken out to what was planted there. And I fully respect people's view corridors, but I think the commission in some cases should be held to, well, in most cases, should be held to approved view corridors and easements across properties. And that just doesn't exist for, unfortunately, for the neighbors because of the type of permit they applied for. But this doesn't seem like any better than, than what we, in terms of numbers, from what we were doing with the last restoration plan.
Well, I agree. When you look at these numbers, my first reaction was that's nowhere near, but I remember though that there is also, through the coppicing approach, going to be regeneration of the pines and some of the oaks that were cut. So that's in this planting is in addition to those trees that will regenerate and regrow.
And I think that I definitely agree with you. I think, but that further is additional evidence that this particular area should be protected while that regrowth is happening. Particularly if this property changes hands, but even if it doesn't, there needs to be that assurance.
Absolutely. The fact that it's a coastal bank didn't provide adequate protection in the first place, and we can't assume that it will continue to provide protection. It's my recommendation that the document that we end up with, which would be in the form of a final enforcement order that encompasses this restoration plan and requires it to go forward, would include an agreement to impose a conservation restriction on this coastal bank area, on everything from the top of the bank on down, for the period during which these trees will require growth. So 20, 25 years to protect that, to make sure that there's no further incursion.
So Teresa Sprague here. I just to go back to some of Callie's comments, I just want to clarify a couple of issues. We are actually not proposing to seed this area. There's a robust existing dense growing ground cover layer. You can see it's listed on the plan as existing area of densely growing Carex pennsylvanica, which is mixed in with bearberry. So again, this is a stable, well vegetated bank from the perspective of the fact that it's got a ground cover layer, it's got a shrub layer, and unfortunately the canopy layer has without a doubt been disturbed. There's no question there's been a major loss of biomass. But as we discussed previously, the root systems that are currently intact, and if you can see that the trees that were cut are generally small in caliber, probably because they are growing so densely. It's a really densely canopied area, or was previously. So the fact that those root systems are in place and that they were fairly small trees that were cut to begin with, we're going to have much more robust growth in those areas than we would from a newly planted tree. Meaning with mature intact root systems, that's going to grow back. But generally, so when we say we're trying to prevent, we're only planting shrubs in areas that don't have any ground cover, that have currently some bare sand, but everything on that plan. And as far as a conservation restriction, I'm not sure if the property owners are on this call right now. I'm not an attorney. I can't speak to that. And I'm not sure who is representing the property owners at this point. I believe they're representing themselves.
Thank you, Teresa.
So there is a total of 5 large canopy trees that were over 10-inch caliber that were removed from the property. And Thanks, Teresa, for that clarification on the planting plan. I just put it off the screen, but it was a little bit unclear. Your shading, the colors don't really come through always. It was a little bit unclear, this pink area from the shaded area. This shaded area here, I think, is what you're calling existing. Maybe this is it, the area that you're calling the existing area of densely growing Pennsylvania. And then this area is the.
You're not sharing the screen, Callie, so
Oh.
that's okay. I'm looking at it on my own, but it's a question of the shading and the cross hatching and where they. So
I mean, there's certain limitations when we're doing multiple layers with, you know, what's reading.
Right.
Is it, I guess that's, so this grass and wildflower seed mix, I was assuming was part of the restoration area, which is this area pink.
So it's interesting. So we're looking at this on a screen and I'm seeing this as green. So that just tells you, I think we've got different screen resolution issues. But I think if you look through the land management plan, and I believe that's what you have up, and we've included photographs of the area. I don't have the land management plan open right here in front of me, but I think if you scroll through that plan, you'll see that there are photographs that we've included of the site a little bit further in. So you can see, I know it looks bare right now, but you can see that in that lower picture, it's actually, and of course it was dormant because we took the pictures earlier in the season, but we're looking at some bare sandy areas that we're talking about seeding. So for instance, where the silt fence was installed at the top of the bank, but the area, the lower picture, that's all Carex pennsylvanica and bearberry growing in there. There's, I mean, in addition, in the very lower portion, you can see the twigs of some black locust that we would like to just cut and treat. And then there are some bare areas as you head a little bit further towards the marsh. And yeah, there. So that's really what that was intended to do.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. I just want to give, I know that DEP is attending this today. Since we had referred this matter to them for their consideration, I just want to check and see whether there's any questions or comments from DEP.
I think if you won't need to unmute yourself, it's *6.
Oh, you just muted. You were unmuted for a second there, Greg. Now you've. There you go. You should be unmuted now.
Greg, are you there? I think he's here.
He was muted, then unmuted, and so he's. All right. Well, while he sorts out his audio problems, I guess my recommendation for what it's worth for this is that we approve this restoration plan. We move forward to finalize the enforcement order, issuing a final enforcement order that will contain this restoration plan and also contain a conservation restriction to prevent any further incursion and while these trees are growing. Also, my recommendation to ensure that this restoration plan, which is quite complex, that the applicant, that the homeowner, not the applicant, the homeowner be required to post a performance bond so that we are assured that this restoration plan will be fully carried out. And under those conditions, I would be willing to move forward with this to the work session for issuance of the final enforcement order.
Commissioner Holt, can I ask a question?
Yes.
regarding the coppicing, my understanding is one of the reasons to coppice is so that you pick the 1, 2, or 3 strongest sprouts, and you hope that they will eventually grow into something significant, and you keep doing that. I think is how I've understood this to be done, and that requires a plan to periodically perform the work. And I don't know how we ensure that that is done when we don't have any way to, I guess, to have a requirement that goes on for, 20 years.
Well, it's an enforcement order, so it's not subject to the 3-year term that an order of conditions would be subject to. So, and it would also be filed of record. So anybody who becomes a subsequent owner will purchase with knowledge that these are the obligations and responsibilities that come with owning this property.
Yeah, because the enforcement order would be recorded against the deed of the property, and a certificate of compliance would have to be issued to remove it from the deed. So, and obviously that wouldn't happen until after the termination of the conservation restriction.
This is Bob Rawls. I have a question or a comment.
Yes, Bob.
And that is that it's always been unclear to me whether those items on the map or on the plan that are just shown as stumps are all going to be allowed to regenerate or only some of them. And in addition to that, it would be useful, I think, to note on the planning plan which specifically are going to be allowed to regrow. And that way, down the road, if anybody goes to check on the progress of everything, they can see that that stump was supposed to be allowed to recoppice and that stump wasn't. So I think it's a key part of the plan. It only focuses on what's being planted, but it doesn't focus on with any specificity what is going to allow to be what is going to allow to regenerate.
Commissioner Holt, I think it's hard to know that at this point because nature doesn't always just follow a linear path and determine that now that this is going to continue to grow and that one isn't. I mean, I think
at least initially, what's going to be allowed to regrow. 10 years from now, someone walks up there and finds that none of the stumps are regrowing, and our plan, I think, is the way I read it, would not have anything to say about it specifically.
So Teresa Sprague here, if I may, the intent is for all of the stumps. They're all currently resprouting. We did not note any stumps that were not resprouting as we have in other areas, not on this particular property. But all of the stumps that you're currently seeing, we've gone out with a plan and they're all showing signs of regrowth. My understanding is that this happened, I'm not quite sure when the cutting actually happened, to be honest with you. Was it last summer? And that there has been regrowth since the original cutting was done. So all of these stumps are exhibiting resprouting.
I understand that they are resprouting. My point is, in the future, to assure that those that are resprouting are allowed to continue to grow.
Yes, well, again, I know I'm making a huge presumption here, but with the presumption that a coastal bank and a resource area is by definition a no disturb zone, although we see that this happens, right? But by definition, it's a no disturb area, so and requires a notice of intent filing to conduct any work, regardless of how minor that work is in the resource area.
Right. So what would satisfy me is if somewhere in your documentation it was explicitly stated that all the stumps that are shown on the plan are to be allowed to regrow.
Okay, I'm not sure if we included that in the land management plan specifically, but we can certainly add that language if that would.
I think part of the, Teresa, just from an administrative standpoint, I think Bob is asking for that not to be in the land management plan, but on your actual planting plan as a note.
As a plan.
And I think That was also one of my points too, about the area, the seeding of existing that we were talking about earlier, for that to be on the planting plan, not on the land management plan. Just a note to that effect, or changing the hashing or the coloring, considering we're getting such different colors.
Okay.
There's currently a note that says focus area for coppice regeneration. Is that what you're referring to?
Who are you talking to, Aditi?
You or Teresa,
okay.
to see if that's what is in,
Yeah,
that means, and that's would satisfy you.
well, it'd satisfy me if it said everything that is in that area is allowed to regenerate.
Yep.
Yeah, so with the note that currently says it's the focus area for coppice regeneration, we could just make it more explicit that all resprouting trees are going to be allowed to continue to grow and be managed per. I guess one of the questions that I have, and again, this is a point, is because this plan is a little bit more technical than, just a simple replanting. I'm presuming that the land management plan would become part of the record on this. Because coppice regeneration is as Dee Dee pointed out, it's multiple years of management. We've expressed that in the coppice regeneration and the goals and objectives and vegetation restoration process in the land management plan.
Teresa, this is Janet, I would anticipate and expect that land management plan would be incorporated into and become part of the order, so that it would all be recorded.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm using.
Okay. All right. Any further questions or comments? Is there a motion? Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to move your, I guess, your recommendation as how we would move forward with a conservation restriction, a performance bond, and I think there was a third thing.
No, it's all incorporated into a final enforcement order, which would incorporate the restoration plan and the land management plan as well.
Yes, so I will move that forward.
I'll second that. This is Kit.
Okay, roll call then to move this to the work session on June 3rd for issuance of a final enforcement order. Ms. Holt.
Aye.
Mr. Kitts.
Aye.
Mr. Rawls.
Aye.
Del Vecchio.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We will continue this on June 3rd and finalize it then.
And I will make those changes and have those submitted 1 week prior to the June 3rd hearing.
And Teresa, as long as you are at the moment the representative of the homeowner, I will provide you in advance with a copy of the document.
Thank you.
The final enforcement order with everything that's in it, so that it can be reviewed and finalized at the work session.
Thank you. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 114 Potnamicket Road, owner William G. Aschenbach, vegetation clearing, regrading, construction of stone wall, patio, fire pit, trampoline, ball court, and white wooden soundboard movie screen.
Good morning, Bill Riley on behalf of Bill Aschenbach. David Clark's on the line, as is Phil Cheney. And a couple of things. First of all, the retaining wall is outside your area of jurisdiction. Not that that's particularly significant, but I just want to report that after Callie sent the initial violation notice to Mr. Aschenbach, he spoke with Callie at the time and retained the services of David Clark, and then worked, and he provided me with phone records to show his communications with the conservation staff to try to set up a meeting so he could understand what he had to do. He wasn't, everybody was busy. He never got return calls after trying to set up a meeting, so he just let it go. When he got the renewed order this winter, he hired me and David, and we explained to him what he had to do. So we retained the services of Phil Cheney. But I'd like to point out that when the Aschenbach family bought the property, the area that currently has the volleyball court and the trampoline was already leveled and essentially cleared. There were a couple of trees in that area, but basically it had been virtually completely denuded. Mr. Aschenbach was aware of the fact that there was a small wet area down at the foot of the hill, and being a do-it-yourself person, he put together a couple of 50-foot hoses, ran them down to what he thought was the wetland, which is, it's not a state wetland, it's just under our bylaw, and, measured up 100 feet, and he thought, since what he was proposing was basically outside of where he measured to, he thought he was okay. And so this is, I understand, I just want the commission members to understand that it was all done in good faith. I'd also like to point out that because of where they're located relative to the 0 to 50 and the 50 to 100, that this is a kind of project that if asked, if applied for as a notice of intent, most likely would have been granted. And the providing mitigation, which I think Phil Cheney's plan provides the kind of mitigation that would be required. So that's sort of where we are. I sent Callie this morning by email some pictures that Mr. Aschenbach had taken prior to him doing any work out there. It shows how the area where these things are was essentially a cleared area. That's sort of where we are. We'd like to, obviously, he'd like to retain these items. He has a young family, and they're active, and this gives him the opportunity to enjoy them and keep them happy and at home. So that's sort of where we are. Phil is on the line, and David Clark is on the line. And if you have questions for David or Phil, that would be that.
All right.
I would hope we could work this thing through.
All right, thank you, Bill, for that. I'm going to leave aside for the moment the questions of what the owner didn't understand and needed clarification on. The enforcement order that was issued on February 25th was pretty straightforward and pretty clear.
And the letter that I sent in May, whether or not there are phone conversations after that letter was sent, the letter was very clear and it was in writing to the homeowner.
Yeah, no, I understand.
At any rate, what we have is what was submitted in terms of the site plan and a restoration plan. So let's focus our attention, I would suggest, on the restoration plan that was submitted. And at this point,
I'll put that up.
Yep, I'd like to ask commissioners to weigh in with comments and questions on what was submitted for restoration purposes.
So this is the site plan that was submitted, and this is the restoration plan that was submitted.
So the restoration plan is built on the site plan, so the same delineations are carried forward. So we should look.
Correct.
Okay, then let's just look at the restoration plan.
Sorry.
That's okay. So yes, Bill's point is taken that you can see where the Okay, there's the 100-foot from the edge of the wetland is the line that runs through the trampoline onward through the volleyball court, at the retaining wall, and obviously the swimming pool and the existing patio and fire pit are outside of jurisdiction. So the restoration is limited to what is within the buffer zones. What is being proposed here is a planting scheme, 3 white pines and 11 inkberry hollies, clethra and bayberry roughly across the 100-foot buffer line. If I've got all that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, but also I neglected to mention that there had been, by the previous owner, disposal of cut materials over the bank, which I don't know if anybody's been out to the site.
We don't have permission.
We don't have permission, so we have a hard time seeing this.
Oh, okay. Well, we should have provided that. In any event, so the planting plan includes the removal of all this brush that was thrown over the edge of the cleared area.
Mm-hmm.
Are you speaking, Bill, about the trees that were removed, or are you speaking about like brush, like lawn debris?
Well, there was a lot of, I would say, it looked like stuff from trees and undergrowth.
Because there is a substantial amount of clearing, which you can see in the Google Maps through time. I'm happy to pull that up when the chair is ready.
Yeah, and that all that clearing was done. All the clearing was done before the Aschenbachs bought the property.
And when was that?
I think in Mr. Aschenbach's on the line. Bill, are you? Can you unmute yourself?
Because Zillow has it as 2013.
Yeah, that would be correct. That's my understanding, right?
So the Google Maps show the clearing in 2018.
Can you show the sequence, Callie, that you showed us yesterday?
Just give me 1 second.
No problem, no rush.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, is that Mr. Aschenbach? I see that you are unmuted.
Yes, ma'am, it is. I'm sorry.
All
I was trying
You're
to
fine.
unmute, and then I saw that I was removed from the meeting. Hi.
You're fine. Just
yes,
hold on one moment. Let me let Callie bring up
Sure.
this aerial photographs that.
So these are aerial photographs from, you can see the date down here from Google Earth. So this is 8/30/2012. Here's the retaining wall, the dwelling, and the pool. And here's the area where there was that clearing that was done. And if you go through and you watch the date, so this is June 7th, 2014. This is June 15th, 2014. This is May 2015. Also May 2016, October 2016, April 2017, February 2018, and then October 2018. And we sent the, so you can see this sort of clearing that's happened here and possibly in the shaded region over here. And the trees are still lying down on the slope themselves. You can see them from the neighbor's house.
Okay, thank you, Callie. Mr. Aschenbach, I'll just ask you to hold and continue to wait for a few minutes until I get other comments and questions from other commissioners, and then you'll have a turn.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Holt?
Yes, Dee Dee, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, since Bill seemed to imply that they would give us the right to go on the property, I'd like the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, of course.
Anybody else? Any questions?
This is Bob Rawls. It's unclear to me what the mitigation is being provided in compensation for. In other words, there's a bunch of stuff, structures, et cetera, in the backyard, and it's not been clear to me which of those this mitigation is in compensation for. In other words, which were provided, which were put in place by the owner, and which weren't, and the square footage, and then so forth.
Right. So let's just be clear here. This is not mitigation that's being offered for a proposal to be permitted. This is restoration of a violation.
Okay.
So the inquiry is a little bit different.
So the intent is to restore cleared area.
Yes.
All right.
The restoration order required submission, I mean, the enforcement order required submission of a plan to restore the area to its condition before the violation.
Right.
Which would be this area here, in addition to what's shown here.
And we're not considering at this point whether additional mitigation might be required for unauthorized structures that were put in place.
No.
This is Joe Kitts. To Bob's point, I really feel like that there's got to be some way that we can relate to what's being proposed to what was done, and without sort of a graphic representation of the areas that we're talking about, it's hard to even make a decision.
Right. What we don't have to what we had in the last violation is a plan that shows what was there before, so that we know exactly what would need to be installed to restore it.
And we had that for that last violation because you hired a third-party consultant to do that work on your behalf.
Right.
Well, you also had stumps to count, which you don't have in this instance.
Right.
I think maybe an on-site would be useful.
Do others agree? Would we consider going on to the site with?
I've only looked over the edge. I'd like to be able to actually go there and walk around. And then one question for Callie is there any way that we can figure out square footage from the Google Earth photos?
Yeah, we can do that. It's not going to be as exact just because of the shading that results from trees. But you can basically get a general idea. It's pretty clear from Google Earth that there was clearing. There's also some, the pictures that I've sent to the commission since last year show the area being the area that was cleared, that sand was brought in for the volleyball court. There is some grading. There's also some additional like loam, seed, and grass that was brought in. So it makes sense that there are no stumps that you can see just because they constructed a beach volleyball court and a trampoline area. And so.
Well, I think on behalf of the Oceanbach family, I think the aerial photos, the Google Earth pictures, are really completely misleading. I mean, because if you go to the original picture, I mean, you can't tell the angle of the camera that is taken because there's clearly a cleared area in this location. We can't tell the size. But it all depends on the angle in which the camera was taking the picture. So I think that, I think an on-site would be useful, and we can talk about, you know, I don't know if David, if David would unmute himself and let us know whether he's done the areas of the items that are, you know, the volleyball court and the trampoline, which is.
It's something I can provide.
Okay, good. So what I would suggest then is an on-site. David will get you the information, and we'll work with the auction box in terms of providing additional photographic evidence of the condition of the property over time, taken from the ground level.
Can you send us, Bill or David or Mr. Aschenbach, a site authorization letter today so that I can visit the site today or tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll send it over to you. Yeah, just Bill Riley. I'll send it over to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Are we talking about a group on site?
Well, we'll have to work out how we do that. But
That's right.
I don't think 6 on-sites are going to work, so we'll just have to, everybody come with all protective gear and stay away and have to.
Will the site be staked?
Yeah, why don't we just stake why doesn't David just stake the area and then we go individually, because I don't know if we have authorization to have an on-site of 10 plus people.
Well, I don't think there's anything to stake, candidly. I mean, there's a cleared area.
The delineations.
There's an edge of the cleared area. When you go past the edge of the cleared area, there's debris that's been thrown over the side. And I would say the volleyball court and the trampoline are pretty obvious, so I don't know what you want.
The delineations aren't staked.
Right, the 100-foot line is the one.
Right. The 100-foot line staked. All right, David.
And the 50 as well. Yeah.
That's way down the hill.
Well, but the restoration plantings that are proposed cross over it, so it'd be useful to know where it ends.
All right. You know, David, how long do you think it would take you to do that?
Probably a couple of weeks.
All right. So it's up to the commission. It's going to take David a couple of weeks to get the staking done. So, you know, as you wish, whatever.
If that's the case, then I don't see how the commission can make a site visit to the property and would have to just rely on the documents that were submitted today to make a decision. In which case it's clear that the restoration that was proposed wasn't fully in line with the full restoration that was required under the enforcement order.
No, I disagree. So.
Well, I mean,
I think it's better to work it out.
I mean, this violation's been going on since May of 2019. It's up to the commission to decide. I don't have a stake in the game, but
yeah.
Again, I point out that, you know, for the area where the work was done, if an application had been filed, it almost certainly would have been granted, you know, subject to some sort of mitigation. We
don't know.
We don't know that, Bill. That's not you can't make that assumption. I'm not sure that a volleyball court in a buffer zone would ever be allowed.
I beg your pardon?
I don't think.
This is a rabbit. This is sort of a rabbit hole.
We're falling into a rabbit hole here. We have no idea. I mean, we disagree that it would have been permitted as activities in the buffer zone. But I'm willing. I need to go see it. I agree with the others. So once the staking is done, we'll each go out. I guess there is no need for an on-site, and probably we can't get authorization to do it together anyway, which is okay. David, if you could possibly get that, is there any way it could be done in advance of the next hearing date on the 27th?
I can try, and I'll let Kelly know if I do get it done before then.
Okay, why don't we be optimistic for the moment and see that if it gets done before then, we can go visit, and then we'll regroup on the 27th, having seen it, and make some further decisions and recommendations as to the extent of the proposed restoration.
Okay, great.
Well, I just have one question.
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
The debris over the banking, is that proposed to be removed as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
This is Bob Roll.
And we'll move.
Yes, Bob. Wait a minute, Bob Rawls has a question. Go ahead, Bob.
I at some point would like to have an assertion on the part of the owner as to which of those structures he did or did not put in.
How do you mean, Bob? I mean, the volleyball court and the trampoline were put in by Mr. Aschenbach.
Okay, that's the sort of thing that I think we need to know. And that should be provided to us in whatever materials you're sending us.
Okay.
All right, then do we have a motion to continue this to the 27th and hope we have a chance to see it before then? Is there a second? Thank you. Roll call to continue the 27th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio? Bob?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We'll continue this to the 27th.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, 1 minute to 12. Let's move through these. COCs.
27 Forest Beach Road is a violation, tree removal, vegetation removal, and regrading. Attorney William Litchfield or Bill Litchfield has requested continues to June 10th.
Right.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Sorry, second. Trying to
There
get
you
my-
go, Joe. Thank you. Roll call to continue to the 27th. Ms. Holt?
Aye.
Hitz?
Aye.
Rawls?
Aye.
Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's continued to the 27th.
June 10, Madam Chairman.
Oh, I'm very sorry. It is June 10th. I'm looking at the last date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Certificates of compliance, 35 Lords Pond Lane, Joe and Michelle Maloney Kitts, SE10 3016. Certificate of compliance requested for construction of a screened-in porch on the existing dwelling, reconfiguration expansion of the existing deck, add an entrance addition, construct a garage with patio and exterior stairs, reconfigure a driveway and walkway, conduct restoration and plant mitigation activities. I recommend issuing a complete certification with the ongoing conditions that the driveway remain permeable, that slow release, low nitrogen fertilizer be used. No additional lawn may exist beyond what's shown on the plan, and the mitigation shall be allowed to naturalize in perpetuity.
And those are the continuing conditions that you have, you can refer to and incorporate. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. Is there a motion to approve the COC?
Commissioner Holt, so moved.
Is there a second who's not Joe?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank
Roll call vote to issue this. Ms. Holt?
Good afternoon, Bill Litchfield, just afternoon on.
Oh, Bill was getting on a call before this one ended up. So Dee Dee, you said aye. Joe, you're abstaining, I take it.
Yes, I am.
Okay, Commissioner Rawls?
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. COC is approved. 501, Mary.
Okay, 45 Cedar Swamp Lane, Cape Realty Ventures, Cape Realty Ventures LLC, SE10 1189, certificate of compliance requested for installation of a septic system. I also recommend complete certification. with no ongoing condition.
Just Commissioner Holt, just a question. Was that a Title V?
Yeah.
Move approval.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Roll call to approve. Ms. Holt,
Aye.
Mr. Kitts,
Aye.
Mr. Rawls,
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio,
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That's approved.
Okay, and then the last one, 641 Kroll Road, Diana Keeker, SE 10-2437, certificate of compliance requested for construction of the pool apron, pergola, and gravel driveway, relocation of septic tank, restoration and maintenance of meadow habitat.
You may be asking yourselves, didn't we do this last week? We did indeed, but when the time came to look at the form for the COC, the chair realized that we could not actually go forward with it as we had voted it as a complete COC because so many parts of the project had not been done and the order of conditions had expired as to the rest of it. So we revised the COC to issue both a partial and an invalid order of conditions, which is permissible under the form because it says check as many boxes as apply. And you'll see in the Dropbox folder, we drafted a attachment to that lays out the reasons why we're taking the unusual step of issuing both a partial COC and an invalid order of conditions. So the vote today is to ratify the change in the certificate that was actually issued. Questions?
What are we certifying compliance with?
We're certifying compliance with the construction of the pergola and that the obligation to the order of conditions has lapsed and is no longer enforceable, and then there are no further obligations on the part of the owner.
Okay, so only the pergola.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Commissioner Holt, I'll move approval.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote to ratify. Ms. Holt,
Aye.
Mr. Kitts,
Aye.
Mr. Rawls,
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio,
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That's approved 6-0 unanimously. Is that it? Is that it?
That's it.
That's it.
Janet, I have a question.
Yes, Bob.
Are we supposed to vote on the schedule, the upcoming schedule that you talked about before?
Even though I was authorized by the act to do it unilaterally by, Chair Fiat, I think it would be better, and I skipped over that line in my notes here, that we hold the vote to ratify the schedule going forward. So thank you for that reminder. Is there a motion to approve the schedule that we looked at this morning?
Yes.
So
Commissioner Holt, second.
Okay, Dee Dee.
Aye.
Mr. Kitts.
Aye.
Mr. Rawls.
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That schedule for hearings is approved. And with that, that's it. Is there a
Thank you.
motion to adjourn?
Holt, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, roll call vote to adjourn. Ms. Holt.
Aye.
Mr. Kitts.
Aye.
Mr. Rawls.
Aye.
Mr. Delvecchio.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 12:06 p.m.